It is a Tuesday evening and you are standing at a pump under those white fluorescent lights, watching the numbers roll, breathing in that faint, sweet smell of gasoline vapor that never quite leaves the concrete. The station has a bright logo, a clean canopy, and coffee inside for $1 and change. And somewhere online, somebody just told you that this exact brand of gas is destroying your engine. So let me be straight with you right up front, because I am not going to string you along for half an hour. Nobody's engine is being destroyed at that pump tonight. Not yours, not mine, not the guy in the lifted truck 2 lanes over. Every drop of gasoline legally sold in the United States meets a federal minimum standard. And 1 tank of the cheap stuff will not hurt anything. That part of the title is oversold, and you deserve to hear that in the first minute, not the last. But here's the part that is absolutely real, and it is backed by one of the most eye-opening fuel tests ever run in this country. An independent laboratory took a single engine, ran it on different pump gas for 100 hours at a time, the equivalent of about 4,000 miles, then pulled it apart and weighed the carbon on the intake valves. The gas from certain stations left 19 times more deposits than the gas from certain other stations. 19 times. Same engine, same test, same octane. The difference was not the gasoline. It was a squirt of chemistry that costs pennies, added or not added, before the truck ever reaches the station. And the 7 brands I am going to name today, brands with thousands of locations, brands you probably drove past this morning, are on the wrong side of that squirt. Stay with me, because the part about the warehouse club should genuinely annoy you. First, let me show you what is actually going on, because almost everything people believe about gas brands is backwards. Gasoline is a commodity. It moves through shared pipelines and sits in shared terminal tanks. And the fuel headed for the fancy station and the fuel headed for the discount station is very often the same base gasoline from the same refinery. The brand does not exist yet at that point. The brand is born at the loading rack when the tanker truck fills up and a metered dose of detergent additive gets injected into the load. That is it. That is the whole difference. The engineers call it a deposit control additive package. Forget the phrase. It is soap for the inside of your engine, and the only question that matters is how much of it went into the truck. The federal government has required a minimum dose in all gasoline since 1996. The automakers decided that minimum was not enough, and in 2004 they wrote their own tougher standard called Top Tier, which requires roughly 2 to 3 times the federal minimum concentration. Some station chains pay to certify and run the stronger dose at every pump, every grade. Some chains run at or near the legal minimum. The sign out front will not tell you which is which. I will. Number 1, Speedway and 7-Eleven. Start with the biggest fish in the pond, because these two are the same company now. 7-Eleven bought Speedway a few years back, and between them, they run one of the largest fuel operations in America. Thousands upon thousands of locations, the kind of places you stop at without even thinking about it. And neither brand appears on the top tier license list. Not Speedway, not 7-Eleven. Now, I want to be fair here, because fair is the whole point of this channel. These stations pump enormous volume, which means the fuel in their underground tanks turns over fast and stays fresh. And fresh fuel matters. Stale gas and water contamination cause more immediate grief than any additive ever will. And a busy speedway is far less likely to have either problem than some dusty crossroads station pumping 12 gallons a day. So the fuel is legal, fresh, and fine for the drive home, but the detergent dose is not certified to the automaker standard, and that is a choice. A company that size could enroll tomorrow. The soap costs pennies per gallon at the terminal. They have looked at the math, decided you are not checking, and priced the gas accordingly. Over one tank, meaningless. Over 80,000 miles of nothing but minimum dose fuel. The carbon quietly stacks up on your intake valves gram by gram, and that is exactly the buildup the laboratory test measured. And I want you to understand what that buildup actually does, because carbon on an intake valve is not some abstract sin. The valve is supposed to seal against its seat and let air flow past a smooth surface coated in crusty deposits, and the airflow into the cylinder gets turbulent and restricted. The mixture goes slightly wrong, and you start feeling it as a rough idle at stoplights, a little stumble when you tip into the throttle, a hesitation that was not there when the car was new. The same testing found engines on minimum dose fuel could roughly double their carbon monoxide output and burn measurably more fuel doing the same work. Most people feel this slow decline and assume the car is just getting old. It is not age, it is arithmetic, one tank at a time. Number 2, Circle K, another absolute giant, one of the largest convenience chains on the planet, with stations on what feels like every third corner in half the country. The gas is their own house brand, and Circle K is not on the top tier list either. What makes this one interesting is that Circle K advertises its fuel hard. They have run promotions, loyalty discounts, their own fuel branding with confident names, the whole show, and none of that marketing tells you the one number that matters, which is the additive treat rate in the load. That silence is the tell. Certification is public, cheap to advertise, and instantly verifiable on a federal website and a free station finder. Chains that carry it put the decal right on the pump because it is the one claim about gasoline that an automaker will actually stand behind. When a chain this size spends money telling you the fuel is great but does not spend pennies proving it to the only standard the engine builders respect, believe the absence, not the advertisement. The old mechanics had a saying about this: trust what the machine tells you, not what the salesman tells you. Your intake valves are the machine in this story, and they keep a perfect ledger of every tank you have ever run. And while we are here, let me pull back the curtain on how the loading rack actually works, because once you see it, the whole industry makes sense. The tanker driver pulls up to the terminal, keys in the order, and the system meters base gasoline into the trailer along with whatever additive package that brand contracts for, at whatever concentration that brand pays for. A truck loading for a certified station and a truck loading for a discount station can fill from the same base fuel tank minutes apart at the very same rack. One gets the strong dose injected, one gets the legal minimum, and both drivers pull out onto the same highway, hauling what looks like identical fuel. The entire difference between every brand on this list happens in those few minutes in a stream of amber liquid thinner than a pencil, metered by a machine that neither knows nor cares what the sign at the end of the road says. Everything after that, the canopy, the logo, the slogan, is theater. Number 3, Casey's. If you live in a small Midwestern town, Casey's might be the only station for 20 miles. And honestly, it might also be where you get your pizza on Friday night. Nearly 2,500 stores across the middle of the country, third largest convenience chain in America, and beloved in a way that big chains rarely are. Not on the top tier list. And this one matters more than the others in a specific way because of geography. In a city, choosing certified fuel means turning left instead of right. In rural Iowa or Kansas or Missouri, the Casey's might genuinely be the only pump on your daily route, which means some of you are running minimum dose fuel, not occasionally, but every single fill for years without an alternative in sight. If that is you, do not panic, because I will give you the fix later and it costs almost nothing. But it is worth sitting with the fact that the fuel quality conversation in this country quietly assumes everybody has options and millions of drivers simply do not. The chain that serves them has chosen the minimum, and the drivers with the fewest choices end up with the most carbon. Nobody planned that outcome in a smoky room. It is just what happens when nobody is watching the chemistry. Now, an honest caveat, because there always is one. How much the detergent dose matters depends on what kind of injection your engine has. If your car dates from the 90s through the mid-2010s, odds are it has port injection where fuel sprays onto the back of the intake valve on its way into the cylinder. In those engines, the detergents literally wash the valve on every cycle, and the strong dose makes its biggest difference, which is exactly what the laboratory numbers showed. Most newer cars use direct injection, where fuel squirts straight into the combustion chamber and never touches the intake valve at all. So no additive in the world can scrub a valve the fuel never reaches. The strong dose still protects the injectors, which run at brutal pressures and clog easily, and still keeps the combustion chamber cleaner. But if you drive a direct injection car, know that fuel choice helps and does not cure, and some valve carbon over a long life is simply the design. Number 4, Murphy USA. You know these even if you do not know the name. They are the little kiosk stations sitting in Walmart parking lots, about 1,700 of them, usually posting one of the lowest prices in town. Murphy built its entire business on being the cheapest sign you see on the way to buy groceries, and I respect the honesty of that model. They are not pretending to sell you anything fancy, but the price on that sign has to come from somewhere, and fuel retail margins are already razor thin, a few cents a gallon on a good day. When your whole identity is undercutting everyone else, the additive package is one of the very few costs you control, and Murphy USA is not on the top tier list. Here is the mechanism, plain and simple, so you understand why this compounds. Every combustion cycle leaves microscopic residue behind. Detergent molecules grab that residue and carry it out the exhaust before it can bake onto hot metal. At the federal minimum dose, some residue gets carried out and some stays. At the certified dose, nearly all of it goes. The engine does not care about any single tank. It cares about the average of the last 500 tanks. A price First Station use exclusively shifts that average in exactly the direction you do not want, and it does so while saving you maybe $1 a fill. That is the trade spelled out. Cheap chemistry now or clean valves later. Number 5, Sam's Club. This is the one that should annoy you because the warehouse clubs accidentally ran a perfect experiment for us. Sam's Club sells members only gasoline at around 600 clubs, deeply discounted, and it is not top tier certified. Costco sells members only gasoline at roughly the same number of locations, discounted just as deep and often deeper, and every gallon of it is top tier certified, all grades, every station. Same business model, same warehouse economics, same bargain hunting customer. One company decided the certified additive dose was worth pennies per gallon, and the other decided it was not. And that comparison quietly demolishes the biggest excuse in the entire fuel industry, which is the idea that quality additives are why premium brands cost more. Costco is routinely the cheapest fuel in any market it operates in, and it runs a strong dose anyway. In fact, Costco went further, becoming one of the very first national brands certified to the brand new tougher standard called Top Tier Plus, written specifically for modern direct injection engines. So the next time anyone tells you cheap gas has to mean weak gas, point at the Costco sign. The chemistry costs pennies. The rest of the price difference at the so-called premium brands is real estate, marketing, and habit. Sam's Club knows all of this, competes head-to-head with Costco every day, and still has not enrolled. Draw your own conclusion. And since I keep leaning on that laboratory test, this is a good moment to tell you exactly where the numbers come from, so you know I am not waving my hands. The test was commissioned by the American Automobile Association back in 2016, and they did it properly. They hired an independent certified engine lab, bought 6 brands of pump gas off the market, 3 certified and 3 not, all the same 93 octane, and ran each fuel through the same engine on a dynamometer for 100 hours, the equivalent of about 4,000 miles, freshening the engine between rounds. Then they pulled the intake valves and put them on a scale. The certified fuels left an average of about 34 milligrams of deposit per valve. The minimum dose fuels left over 660 milligrams per valve. That is the 19 times figure, weighed on a bench, not estimated in a press release. When the engineers running the study said they were surprised by the gap, that is about as loud as engineers ever get. Number 6. Wawa. Now I'm going to catch some heat for this one, and I accept my fate because people love Wawa the way other people love their football team. About 1,000 stores, mostly up and down the East Coast, legendary sandwiches, spotless bathrooms, coffee that inspires actual devotion, and the gasoline is not top tier certified. This is what I call the halo effect, and it is worth understanding because it is how good companies end up with unexamined products. When everything you can see at a business is excellent, you naturally assume everything you cannot see is excellent too. The store is clean, so the fuel must be clean, but those two things are handled by entirely different parts of the company, and the additive dose in the tanker is invisible in a way the hoagie counter is not. To be fully fair, Wawa pumps tremendous volume. The tanks turn over constantly. The fuel is fresh, and the stations are well maintained, all of which genuinely counts for something. Fresh minimum dose fuel from a busy Wawa beats stale fuel from a dead station any day of the week. But fresh is not the same as fortified. The laboratory test that found 19 times the deposits was not testing stale gas against fresh gas. It was testing additive dose against additive dose, fresh against fresh. On that measurement, the one that actually builds carbon over years, the beloved brand and the bargain kiosk are standing in the same line. Number 7, Sheetz. And of course, where Wawa goes, Sheetz must follow because the rivalry between these two is practically a regional religion. Close to 700 stores across Pennsylvania and the surrounding states, made to order food, stations the size of small airports, and fuel that is likewise not on the top tier list. Everything I just said about the halo effect applies here identically. So instead of repeating myself, let me use this last item to sweep up the rest of the field, because these 7 are not alone. Racetrack across the South, Pilot and Love's out on the interstates where practically every long-haul road trip fills up. Quick Trip in the upper Midwest, another genuinely well-run company with a devoted following. Maverick out west. Most grocery store fuel programs, none of them currently on the certified list. Add it all up, and here is the honest picture. A massive share of American drivers, quite possibly most of them, are filling up at minimum dose stations most of the time, not because they compared the chemistry and chose, but because the station was on the right side of the road and the sign was 3 cents cheaper. The surveys back this up. Most drivers pick a station on price and convenience alone, which is completely rational behavior right up until you learn that the thing being left out of the cheap load cost pennies, and the automakers themselves went out of their way to warn you about it. One more piece of honesty before we move on, because I promised you Nuance, not a hit list. The additive dose is not the only thing that makes a station good or bad, and a certified decal does not make a station perfect. A high volume sheets with fresh fuel, tight tank maintenance, and clean filters is a better place to fill up than a forgotten certified station where the gas has been sitting in a leaky old tank collecting water since spring. Volume keeps fuel fresh, and these big chains have volume in spades, which is genuinely in their favor. The ideal, obviously, is both a busy certified station, and in most of the country you can find one without going a block out of your way. But if I ever had to rank the sins of a gas station, water in the tank beats weak detergent every time, because water can strand you Tuesday while carbon takes years. The 7 brands on this list will not strand you. They will just quietly leave your engine dirtier than it needed to be decade after decade, and never once mention it. And that brings us to the part of this story that actually matters, because the obvious question is hanging right there. If the strong additive dose costs pennies per gallon, why does anyone skip it? Here's the history, and it explains everything. Back in the 80s and early 90s, fuel injection was taking over, and injectors and intake valves started fouling with deposits at an epidemic rate. Cars stumbled, hesitated, failed emissions tests, so the federal government stepped in, and starting in 1996, every gallon of gasoline sold in America had to contain a minimum level of deposit control additive. Good news, right? Except for what happened next, which is the part nobody advertises. Before the rule, the big brands competed on detergent quality, and some ran generous doses. After the rule, the minimum became a target. A meeting happened at company after company. Someone pointed at the mandated floor, and the treat rates drifted down toward it, because every fraction of a cent saved per gallon multiplied by billions of gallons is serious money. The additive is invisible. No customer ever walked in complaining that the treat rate felt low. So the race to the bottom ran quietly for years, and the people who noticed were the automakers, because they were the ones eating warranty claims for carboned up engines that had done nothing wrong except drink legal gasoline. They could not force the fuel industry to do better. So in 2004, General Motors, BMW, Honda, and Toyota wrote their own voluntary standard, called it top tier, and told the fuel retailers, certify or we will keep telling our customers to buy from someone who does. Today, 10 automakers back that program. Read that chain of events again, because it is remarkable. The companies that build the engines had to invent a private quality standard to protect their machines from the legal fuel supply. There is no grand conspiracy in any of this. There is just a floor that was meant to be a floor and became a ceiling because there is no money in exceeding a minimum nobody can see, and there is a great deal of money in shaving pennies off a product sold by the billion gallon. And underneath all of it sits a truth I keep coming back to on this channel. Your engine is the most honest witness you own. It does not read billboards. It does not care that the coffee inside was excellent or that the sign was a brand your father trusted. It keeps a physical record in milligrams of carbon on the back of every intake valve of the actual chemistry you fed it, tank after tank, year after year. And in a marketplace where nearly everything is presentation, where the store is designed and the sign is focus grouped and the fuel names are invented by marketing departments, there is something almost refreshing about that. The machine cannot be advertised to 34 milligrams or 660 milligrams. The valve does not lie. Most of what you buy in this life, you will never really know what was in it. Your engine is one of the few places where the truth is sitting right there, bolted shut, but absolutely knowable, waiting for anyone curious enough to look. Choosing your fuel on evidence instead of habit is a small act, but it is the same muscle as every other good decision you will ever make about a machine. Look past the sign. Ask what is actually in the load. So here's what I want you to do, and it is easier than you think. First, find out where you stand. The certified brand list is public and free on the Top Tier Gas website, along with the station finder, and the decal is usually right on the pump. You will find plenty of familiar names on it: Shell, Chevron, Exxon, Mobil, Marathon, Valero, Sunoco, Citgo, Sinclair, Quick Trip, Costco, and dozens more. Certified fuel is not exotic and it is usually not expensive. Second, aim for consistency, not perfection. A tank of minimum dose gas on a road trip means nothing. What matters is what you run week in and week out. So if a certified station sits anywhere on your normal routes, make it the habit. Third, if you have been running minimum dose fuel for years, do not spiral. The same testing that found the deposits also found they are partly reversible. A few thousand miles on certified fuel measurably cleans up existing buildup, and rough idle or light hesitation often improves with nothing more than a change of station. Fourth, do not confuse this with octane. Premium fuel at an uncertified station still carries the weak dose, and regular fuel at a certified station carries the strong one because certification covers every grade at the pump. Buying premium to protect your engine at the wrong station is paying extra for exactly nothing. And fifth, keep some perspective. Fresh fuel from a busy station beats stale fuel anywhere. A good air filter and clean oil still matter more than any additive. And one more time for the folks in the back, nobody is destroying your engine. The stations on this list are not villains, and their fuel is not poison. They are businesses that chose the legal minimum on something invisible, betting correctly that almost nobody would ever check. You just checked. That already puts you ahead of most drivers on the road. Picture yourself 6 months from now, filling up at a station you chose on purpose for a reason you can explain, knowing the extra soap in that load is quietly scrubbing years of shortcuts off your valves, costs you nothing but attention. That is my favorite price. Now it is your turn, and I genuinely mean that. Tell me in the comments below which of these 7 you fill up at and whether you had any idea about the list before today. If you are from Wawa country or Sheetz country, I especially want to hear from you. And yes, you may defend the sandwiches with your whole heart. The sandwiches were never on trial. And if you are one of the folks in a small town where Casey's or the kiosk by the Walmart is genuinely the only option, tell me that too, because those stories matter, and I read every single comment on these videos. They are half the reason I keep making them. If this one taught you something, subscribe before you go, because the next video is one I have been promising for a long time, and it is finally happening. We are digging into the transmissions that come from the factory marked filled for life, with fluid the manufacturer says never needs changing ever. Except here's the detail that should stop you cold. Buried in the fine print, some of those same manufacturers quietly define the life of the transmission as the day that fluid wears out. The fluid does not last the life of the transmission. The transmission lasts the life of the fluid. Once you see how that sentence actually works and who profits from you reading it the other way, you will never look at a sealed gearbox the same again. That one is next, and it has been a long time coming. Until then, read the pump before you trust the sign, and keep an eye on the quiet stuff, because in this business, the quiet stuff is where the money hides.